Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session on deep learning. Today, we'll have a practical session by Ms. Jeannie Goel. So, she will be taking your practical sessions, and for today, she will be your expert. Good afternoon, Jeannie, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are perfectly audible.
Okay.
And let me tell you something about Jeannie ma'am first, and then she can start with the lecture for today. She is currently pursuing PhD from PEC, which is a deemed to be university, under the guidance of Dr. Padmavati and Professor Trilok Chand. Her areas of expertise lies in machine learning, deep learning, and signal processing. And for the current work that she is doing is based on diagnosis for Parkinson's disease using machine learning and deep learning techniques. So she is finding out various techniques for diagnosing them. So, Jeannie ma'am, I have given you the right so that we can start with the session.
Yes, thank you. So today we'll discuss some basics of Python with respect to machine learning and deep learning, not from the starting, but with the libraries and with the functions that are mostly used in the deep learning and machine learning techniques. Yes, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, visible.
Okay, so you can interrupt me in between if at any time I am not audible or you are not able to see my screen. So first of all, we'll start with the NumPy library. NumPy library is a linear algebra library that is used for Python. It is a main building block that is incredibly fast, and it has its binding to the C libraries. That is, various functions are there which have their bindings with the C library. That is why we are going to discuss NumPy library first. It is the most used library in the machine learning and deep learning. Mostly the NumPy library comes with the inbuilt, like it is already present in the Anaconda environment. But suppose if you are not able to import this library, you can install it using pip install NumPy, this command. You can install using this, right? After installing, you can import this library using this import NumPy as NP function. So what does it do is it is importing this NumPy library and we are aliasing this library as NP. So why we are aliasing this is so that each time we want to call a function or a class of NumPy, we don't have to write it completely. Like every time we don't have to write it like NumPy dot NumPy dot. So we are aliasing it to a short form that is NP. So we'll start with the arrays. These arrays are the most used ones in the machine learning. So to define an array using NumPy, what we can do is, one way is we can create a list, and from that list we can convert it into an array. For example, we are creating here a list that consists of 3 elements, 10, 20 and 30. So you know how to create a list. We use square brackets for that. And to visualize the list, we can see that it consists of 3 elements, 10, 20 and 30. So to convert this list into an array, we use the function array of the NumPy library. So to use that, what we are doing is we are calling using NP, that is the aliasing that we have provided. NP dot array is a function which we want to use to convert this one-dimensional list into an array. And inside that function, we pass an argument, the list that we want to convert. So if we run this, so you can see now that we have created a one-dimensional array which consists of 3 elements. So you can use this way to create one-dimensional arrays. The other way is that you can take the user input values from the user and then you can in the form of a list, and then you can convert the list into the array in the same way that we have done. Suppose we want to see the shape of this array. So you will see that we have 3 comma and nothing is there. So it shows us that it is a one-dimensional array that consists of 3 elements. Similarly, we can create 2D arrays, 3D arrays, any n-dimensional arrays we can create like this. For example, if we want to create a 2D array, so what we will do is we'll create a list of lists, that is multiple lists inside a list. So for example, if we want here a 2D array, so what we have done is we have created first a list, these outer brackets, and inside that we have added 4 lists that we want to add. So if we run this, you can see that we have created 4 lists inside one single list. Now to convert this list into an array, we'll use the same function np.array, and we'll pass this matrix that we have, that is the list of lists we had. And if we run this, you can see that we have created a 2-dimensional array here, which consists of 4 rows, that is the 4 lists that you have created, and inside that we have 3 elements in each, that is the 3 columns that we are creating. In the similar way, we can create n number of arrays with n dimensions. So if we want to see the type of this array, you will see that it is of the integer type. Why it is of integer type? Because all the elements here are of integer type here. Similarly, we can create the array of all other types that we want. For example, we don't need to explicitly define it that what type of array we are creating. For example, here you can see that we have a floating point value 10.02, and similarly there is a floating point value here 9.13. so it itself will create this array. So if we run this, you can see that this array that we have created, a 2D array that we have created, is of the type float 64, and we have not explicitly defined the type of the array we want. So the Python will directly convert it depending upon what type of values we are putting inside it, right? Now if we see the shape of this array, it is 4 by 3, that is 4 rows and 3 columns. And similarly, you can create an n-dimensional array. These type of arrays will be used when you have a high dimensional data sets, that is you have more than 2 features. In that case, these type of arrays will be very helpful. There is another function in NumPy where we can reshape this array to any shape that we want. For example, now we have a 4x3 array that is consisting of 4 rows and 3 columns, and we want to convert it into an array consisting of 6 rows and 2 columns. So the function is .reshape. We'll give the name of the array that we want to reshape, dot the reshape function that we are using, and the dimensionality that we want. So here you can see that we have converted our 4x3 array into 6x2 array. So how will it do that? It will, like for example, we have 2 columns here. So it will first pick first 2 values in the first 2 columns in the first row, and similarly 30 and 5 as the second row, and 10 and 15 as the third row, and so on. Similarly, we can, for example, we want an array with the shape of 2x6. So we can do that also. Now you can see we have 2 rows and 6 elements in each column. Now suppose we want to convert this array into 3x3. So it will not convert this into a 3x3 array. Why? We need the reshape amount to the total number of elements that are present in our original array. For example, if we have an original array of 12 elements, we need to convert it into a type that should consist of 12 elements. Here we are converting in trying to convert it into 3x3 array that require 9 elements, but we are initially having 12 elements. So it will not convert that and give us a value error that it cannot reshape the array of size 12 with this shape. So for reshaping, you need to be sure that both the number of elements in both the arrays should be same. So these are some types of arrays that we can create. Similarly, NumPy also give us some inbuilt arrays that we can directly use. These arrays will be very helpful in the machine learning and deep learning where you will require these. For example, the first type of arrays are all zeros arrays. That is, it will create us an array that will give us all the values as 0. So in these zero array, you can then add on the values that you want. So what will be the benefit of using this array? So the benefit will be that you will not have nan values in that, and that will not affect your functioning ahead, right? So we can use this array. For example, I have created here an array np.zeros. Inside that we have created 5. It means that we want one dimensional array which consists of 5 elements, and all these elements would be 0. Similarly, we can have 2D arrays here also. So you can see that I have created a 5 by 5 matrix with all the elements as zeros. This is a square matrix. We can have other type of matrix also, like 3 cross 5, that will consist of 3 rows and 5 columns. So you can have any type of array with these np.zeros, and all elements will be zeros inside. Similarly, similar to the zeros, we can have ones array also, that consists of all elements that are ones. So we can have a 1D ones array that consists of 5 elements of all the values where all the values are 1. Similarly, we can have a 2D array, 5 cross 5 array, where all elements are 1. And similarly, and any type of other type of array. For example, here we have created a 3 cross 5 array. You can give any dimension to it. It will create an array and enter all the values as 1. Similarly, we have an identity matrix also. We can create an identity array of any size we want. So these type of arrays will be very helpful in the linear algebra. For example, if we are doing some problem where linear algebra is needed, so we don't need to manually create an identity array. We can directly call the E by E function that will create an array for us. For example, if we have added 5 here, so it will give us a 5 cross 5 array where all the diagonal elements are 1. So here we cannot give 2 arguments. Why? Because identity arrays are always square matrices. Either it will be 3 cross 3, 4 cross 3. There cannot be like 3 cross 5 identity matrix cannot be there. So we need only to add only one number inside it to create an identity matrix. The other type of arrays that we can have is using np.arrange function. So what it does is, it will give us an array starting from this element that we will add here, ending till here, where 50 is not included. The first element is inclusive, and last element is exclusive in nature. That is, last element is not created. So you can see here it has created us a 1D array with the starting element 5 and ending element as 49. So it will give us an array of integers starting from 5 till 50. You can see that if you see the functionality of this, you will see the arrange function take the starting element, the ending element, and you can see here the step size is also there. So we can add the step size also. First of all, if we want to include 50 also, then we have to run till 51, right? Because the last element is not included. Now we want to add some step to it. Like for example, we don't want every integer. We want all the integers that are multiple of 5. So we're starting with 5 till 50, where 50 is not included. And the last argument is the step size for what step we want to change our next integer to be. So you can see here it is a 1D array that has a step size of 5, that is 5, 10, 15. As 50 was not included, so it has given us the value till 49. So if we want to include 50, we have to run it till 51. Then we can have our 50 element here also, right? So these are the arrays, these are the integer arrays that we can create with any number of step size. Next are some of the random arrays that we use. For example, if we have want to create a large data set, we cannot create it using the manual work. That is, we cannot add the values one by one. And NumPy give us the facility to add the values at random. So NumPy has a class, that is random class there, from which we can create different types of arrays, which will give us the random integers or random values in between. So to use that function, what we can do is either we can directly use like import numpy as np, and then from NP we can call this random class, and inside that random class we can call any function. For example, let me show you. We can also do it like this: import numpy as NP. From now NP we can call the class random, and from that class we can here add the any function we want, but it will be quite big to write every time, right? That is why there is another method of calling this, that is from this numpy library we want to import this random class as R. R is the aliasing that we have provided. You can provide any aliasing here. So now we have imported this library. Suppose we want random values between zeros and 1, and we want hundreds of such a value. So we don't have to add those values manually. So random class has a function rand. It will give us the random values. So here you can see we have added 10 here. So it will give us the 10 values between 0 and 1. By default, all the values will be in the range of 0 and 1. This is the one-dimensional array. Similarly, every function can be applied to the 2D arrays also. So here you can see if we have 5, 5. So we will have a 5 cross 5 matrix with all the random values from 0 to 1. Similarly, we can create an ND random arrays. Now, instead of just taking the random values, we can have a standard normal distribution data also. Because in the machine learning or deep learning, we always try to make our data normalized. So instead of just creating random values, we can have standard normal distributed array also. So for that, there is a function rand, n will give us a normal distribution. So if we run this, you will see that there are 10 elements. Now the elements are not in the range of 0 to 1. It can be negative also, it can be positive also, but all the elements that are present here are in the normal distribution. Similarly, you can create for 2D arrays also. So now these were the arrays between 0 to 1 or the standard normal distribution arrays. Now suppose we want an integer array, right? So for that, suppose we want an random number from range 0 to 10, right? So for that, there is a function rand int. It will give us an integer value till the range 10. So if we run again, you will see that number here is now 9. It has randomly generated a 9 number. If we run this again, you can see now the number is 2. It will be always less than 10 or from 0 to 9, right? Similarly, we can also give the range of the number from which we want our integer to be. Like for example, I want an integer between 10 to 100, where 100 is not included here. Similarly, 10 is also not included here. It will give us number from 0 to 9. Similarly, here it will give us number from 10 to 99, any random number. So if we run this, now it has given 85. You can randomly generate any number between 10 to 99. 100 is not included. Now this is the single element that we are taking out randomly. Suppose we want a list of elements, list of random integers. So for that, what we can give is, we can first provide the range, that is 10 to 100, that is 10 to 99. And the 5 is like, we want 5 random integers in the range from 10 to 100. So if we run this, so you can see it has given us 5 random integers in the range from 10 to 100. You can see 99 is there, but 100 is not present. So if we run this again, you can see again a random 5 integers. So you can generate n number of integers in any range that you require. So apart from the arrays, we can also we can calculate some basic functions out of arrays. For example, we want to calculate the mean, median, maximum, minimum, standard deviation. So we can find out all that just using one function. So first of all, I have created here a random integer array from the range 10 to 99 and 10 elements are there. We have had it 10 here. If I want 5 elements, then I can write 5 here. So I have 10 elements here and I want to find out what is the maximum of this. So we can directly give the array from which we want to find out our value dot max function we can directly use. So it will give us the maximum value that is contained inside this array. Similarly, we can also calculate the minimum value. Here you can see the minimum value is 14. Similarly, we can calculate the mean also. So what it will do, it will sum the elements and divide by n and give us the mean of the array, that is 53.3. And similarly, we can also calculate the standard deviation of the array. There are other functions also which you can do. You can explore that functions, right, as and when required. Next is the important topic, that is slicing and indexing. It is very important. Now we always don't want complete array. We want some elements out of it, right? So that comes under slicing and indexing. For that, first of all, what we are doing is we are creating a random integer array, same as that before, that is 10 elements in the range of 10 to 99. Now suppose we want the 8th index, the element that is present at 8th index. Now note that the values here are indexed from 0 and not from 1. So if we want an value at 8th index, it means it will be the 9th value. So you can see this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. It is giving us 9th element. So if we want 9th element, we want the value at index 8. So it will give us 16 value, right? Similarly, suppose I want the values from index 1 to 6. That is, we want 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th element. So instead of giving one by one, but we can define a range using colon. So inside the colon, you can see first element is which we want to include and last is up till which we want the elements to be. Now here 6 is also not included. So you will get this first, second, third, fourth and fifth, right? These elements. Now suppose we want the element up till 6 but from the starting. So we don't need to provide the starting index. We can just give the column. In front of the column there is an empty space which tells us from the starting, right? So here you can see that we want all the elements from the starting. So it will give us 26, 68, 60, 68, right, up till the 6th one. Now, suppose we want an element till end, but we want to start from the 6th element. The similar is the case here. After column, we need not to specify anything. We just need to specify the first index and it will give us all the elements starting from 6 till end, right? That is 75, 65, 16 and 56, right? Now, similarly, that we have taken the values out of a 1D array. Similarly, we can also take the values out of a 2D array or any n-dimensional array. For that, I have created here a 2-dimensional array from the range 1 to 50. And we have defined the size here as 5, 5. So what it will give us? It will give us, so you can see here, it has given us a 5 cross 5 array with all the value that range from 1 till 49, as 50 is not included here, right? So we have, you can create 2D random integers array like this. You can specify the size here in a braces. So you can have any type of array here, 3 cross 4, 4 cross 3, 6 cross 6, any type of array you want, you can create using this function. Now suppose we want to find out what is the second row of this matrix. So for that, what we'll do is we'll just write the array that we have created, and the braces we add 2. So you will see that indexing start from 0. So 0, 1 and 2 here. Right? You can see that we have got out the second row from this matrix. Similarly, we want one particular element, so we need to specify both row and column. For example, we are giving here second row, that is this row, and second column 0, 1, 2, that is 41. It should give us a 41 answer. So you can see that second row and second column is 41. So we can get out one single element also out of it, right? Similarly, we have seen the row, the particular element. Suppose we want particular column. So for that, what you see is inside the square brackets, if we add a comma in between, the first element will give us rows we want, and the second element will give us the columns we want, right? So we want all the elements in a row where the column number is 2, right? You got that? Before comma we'll take row, and after comma we'll take column. So I have just here given column. It means I want all the elements in a row, right? I told you if we are not writing anything in front of the column, then it will start from the starting, and if we are not writing anything at the end of the column, then it will go till ending, right? So it means we want all the elements in a
Your
row.
voice is breaking. Your voice is breaking, ma'am.
From where have you understood what I have said, or is there any confusion in between because of the voice breakage?
Last few minutes.
So from where you want me to repeat?
From 2DRS, ma'am.
Ma'am, your voice is still breaking.
Okay, let me check. Wait. Yes, now is my voice okay?
No, ma'am, it's not fine.
Yes, ma'am, it is audible.
It is audible, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So from where you are having trouble, have you got this 346 cell? You got this? Or you want me to repeat?
I got this, ma'am, I got this.
Okay. So we were here. Suppose now I was telling you that we want the second column, right? And all the elements of that. So for that, we are defining here only column. Why we are defining column? Because if we are not giving any element in front of the column, then it will start from the starting. And similarly, if we will not give any value after column, then it will go till ending. So all the elements of row having column 2. So if we run this, you will see that we have got the second column, right? Similarly, if we want particular elements from the row and particular elements from the column, we can do that also in the similar way. So we have defined a comma here. Before comma, it is a row, and after comma, it is a column. So we want from 0 till second row and 0 till second column. That is these elements we want. So if we run this, we get these elements we are getting. Why we are getting these two only? Because the last index is not included, right? We already told you that last index is not included. First one is included, right? So these were the basics of the NumPy array that are mostly used in machine learning and deep learning. You can explore the NumPy library. It is very vast. It consists of many functionalities that you can use. But these were that I discussed were the most used one in machine learning and deep learning. So I have provided the link here. Here you can find out the documentation of the NumPy library, where you can find out any functionality that you will come across, right? So I'll show you. This is the page of the NumPy library. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so here you can come to the documentation part. So here you can see all type of array, like array creation, its indexing, input, output with NumPy, type, broadcasting, and you can have n number of values, n number of types that you want. For example, I want to see the array creation part. So you can see here, right? So it will give, it will give you the detailed documentation of anything that you want, right? I have covered out the major sections that we'll use. Others you can see from here. So after NumPy, the second most used library is Pandas. If anybody has any doubt in the NumPy, can ask. So we'll start with, if you have no doubts, we can start with the Pandas library. So it is the second most used library after NumPy, and it is built on the top of NumPy library. That is, we will require NumPy library to use the Pandas library, right? Similarly, like we installed the NumPy library, you can install Pandas also using pip command, pip install Pandas. And similar to the way we imported NumPy, we can import Pandas also. Import Pandas, and we can give any aliasing, like I have given PD here, right? So in Pandas, there are two most important things. One is the series and other is the data frame. We'll start with the series first. Series is like a NumPy array that we have already seen above, right? The difference between a series and a NumPy array is that it can be labeled, right? The array, we were just giving values. Here we can label it, we can indexing it, we can provide indexes to it. That is, every element can be given a index, and we can get out the elements out of it, not just from the numbers but from the label also. That is the unique label that we are providing to it. We can use that label to extract any element out of the array, right? And it can, the second important thing about series is that it can hold any arbitrary Python object. That is, it can hold string values, it can hold integer values, it can hold a combination of values also. That is why series is very important. So for that, similar to the way that we have created an array, here also we created a list that consists of 3 elements, right? Now you can see that the difference between the array that we created in the starting and the series that we have created, you see that the first element 10, it has an index of 0. Similarly, next element 20, it has an index of 1. Next element is 30, which has an index of 2. So here indexing is provided. And now we can manually give this indexing also. For that, for example, I have provided the labels here. I have 3 labels given to these 3 values, A, B, and C, right? So here, while creating, is this using this series function, pd.series. First, I have given the data that I want. Then I have given the indexing. So indexing I have given as the manual labels that I have created here, right? So now you can see, instead of 0, 1, and 2, we have manually added the labels, right? And we can now call any element of this series using these labels that we have provided. Like I told you, it can hold any arbitrary object. So here I have the, yes. Okay, so here I have created, you can see an list that consists of string values, right? So I have taken 3 string values. And similar to the way ahead, I have also given the data, that is the new data that we have created, and the labels that we have provided. So you can see the series here consists of integer values. Now the difference between these two is, you can see here The data type is integer, int 64, because the values that we added here is 64. And here the data type is object. Object here refers to the string. Object can be anything, not only string, it can be anything. Like we can even give functions inside it, right? So it can take that also. Now suppose we want to extract any element from a series. So here we have not saved the series in some variable. Now I'm trying to save this series that I have created here inside a variable series. So if I run this, you will see that we have a series that consists of three values, string values. Now suppose we want this first value. So we can directly call it using the label that we have provided. If I run this, we'll get the first value, right? And the type that we want, if we want to see the type, you can see it is from the pandas series type, right? Next is a data frame. Data frame is like a combination of various series, right? I can have multiple series, and if I combine them with labeling and indexing, then I'll get a data frame, right? So first is how to create a data frame. In the similar way that we have created a series, we can create a data frame using this function data frame, D capital F capital, this function from the pandas library. So for that, suppose we are taking out a data. As I already told you, we can have a random values. I am taking here random values 1 till 9, and I'm creating a 2D array out of it of size 4, 3. If I run this, you will see that I have 4 rows and 3 columns randomly created. Now I want to convert this array into a data frame. So what I will do is I'll give indexing here to each row, and I will give indexing to each column. Suppose I am manually giving the labels to each row. So here we have 4 rows, so I have given 4 labels here. Similarly, we have 3 columns, so I have given labels here to 3. Now I want to create a data frame out of it. First of all, I will give the data that I want from which the data frame is to be created. Next, I want to give the index. Index will be given to each row. So I have provided the row, labels of the rows that I have created manually. And for each column, we also want to give the label. So I'll add the label column that I have created here. So if I run this, you can see that a data frame is created here. It looks like an Excel sheet, right? So we can do any functions that we can do on the Excel sheet, plus the added functions also. So data frame works like a data in the Excel sheet, right? So in this way, we can add any number of values to it, like n-dimensional arrays we can have here in the data frame. If we check the type of this, you can see it is from the pandas library of the type data frame. Now we want to select the values out of a data frame similar to the way we selected the values from the 1D array, 2D array and series, right? So how we can select the values? You can see here the data frame. There are 3 columns, X, Y and Z. Suppose I want the X column out of it. So we'll take DF, that is the data frame that we have created, and we'll give the column name inside it, and we'll get all the values of that column with a unique label that is provided here, A, B, C and D. That means this is the these labels A, B, C and D are shared among all the columns. That is, I tell you in the starting that data frame is a combination of series. To prove that, if we check this type of this, you will see it is of the type series. That is, you can consider this as first series, this as second series, this as third series, right? A combination of 3 series to form a data frame. Similarly, a combination of rows is also a series combination, right? This is a single series where X, Y and Z are shared. Similarly, this series where X, Y, and Z are shared. So these are also series and these are also series, and a combination forms us a data frame, right? Similar way that we have taken first column out of it, we can have multiple columns also. So for that, what we are doing here is these first are for the columns that we want to provide. Now, instead of a single column, we provide a list of columns. So we want to provide a list of columns. That is why there are another set of braces inside it, right? So the second set of braces are for the list of columns that we want to provide. So if we run this, you can see we get out X column and Z column out of it, right? So now if we check the type of this, what its type should be, a data frame. Why a data frame? Because this one was series, this one was also a series. We combined the two series, now a data frame is formed, right? So if we check the type of this that is having two columns, it's still a data frame. Similar to the way we have extracted the columns, we can also extract the rows here. So if we run this, if we give this unique label A, you can see we get the shared value X, Y, and Z. So if you check the type of this, you will see that it is also a series, right? As I already told you. Similarly, now suppose I want a particular value from there, like for example, a row, particular row and a particular column. So I'll take A row and X column. If I run this, you will see a value 2. That is this column, this row and this column. Right? Similar to the case that was in the arrays, we are separated it by comma. In the first, we have given the row. In the second, we have given the column. Similarly, we can give, like for example, we want only one row, but we want a list of columns. So now if we want the list of columns, we have to add another set of braces, right? So we have added here a new set of braces that will give us the list of columns that we want. If we want more than a one column. So here we want two columns. So you will see that I have, for the A row, we have got out the value of X column and we have got out the value of Z column, right? Similarly, we can also have a value from multiple rows and multiple columns. So if we want a list of rows, so we need to set another set of braces. So we added another set of braces where we add two rows, comma. Now we also want a list of columns. So we have added another set of braces here also. So I will get a value corresponding to A and D row and X and Z column. So you can see we get a data frame like this. So we can extract any value out of it, any row, any column, any particular row or any particular column. So you have seen that from the data frame, we have all these values using this loc function, LOC. LOC stand for location. That we are providing the location and it is giving us the values. Now suppose instead of providing the names of the column, we want to use the indexes of the columns or the rows, right? So for that, there is another function, iloc. I stand for indexing, that we want to use the locations in the form of indexing. So instead of giving A, B, C or D, we can give like the index of that particular label. For example, you see this is our data frame, original data frame that we had. Now suppose I want this row, right? So either we can use this C label to get out this, or we can use the indexing also. So if we want to use this C label, we'll use the loc function. And if we want to use the indexing, we'll use iloc function. For example, I run this. You can see for the row C, I have got the values out for X, Y, and Z. That is 3, 1, and 9, right? Similarly, you can also give the indexing for row as well as a column. For example, I want to take second row and second column 0, 1, 2, that is Z, that is ninth value, right? So we'll run this. So you can see we got this 9, right? So you can use either lock or ilock depending upon you have index with you or you have a column name with you, right? So data frames gives you the flexibility to extract the data using both. Now you can see the data frame is like a table, right? So we want to add, suppose, a new column to it. So this was our original data frame that we had that consists of 4 rows and 3 columns. Now I want to add a new column to it. So I am defining here a new column that is a random integer column that consists of values between 10 to 95, and we have a 4 values of it. Why we have 4 values here only? Because if we want to add a column here, we need to provide first row, second row, third row, and fourth row value, right? So here we are adding 4 values here. That is why we run this. You can see I have created a random array that consists of 4 values. Now I want to add this into a data frame. So what we can do is we can define df is the data frame, original data frame that we have. Now we want a new column to it. So we'll give the name of the column that we want here and we add the values to it. We can directly add the values also, or you can do it like I have done, right? So now is here. So now you can see that I have new column here with the name new, and the values that I have created here are added here. Similarly, you can add n number of columns here. Now suppose we want to add another column. Now I also told you that in series and data frame we can add any type of value, right? So suppose now I want our 5th column to be of type string, right? So we'll define a new column like I have given here. So we'll have 4 values. So this is a new column that we have created. Now I want a new column to be added into the data frame. So I'll give the name of the column that I want. Suppose I have given the name new string and I have given the new column that we have added. So you can see that now we have 5 columns, out of which 4 are integer values and the last one is a string type. So we can add floating point values here or Boolean values here. Any type of values you want in your data frame, you can add, right? Not only just integer values, you can have a multiple or combination of values in the data frame. So you can add any column to your data frame. Now suppose I want to, I have added a column. Now I can also delete the column from, delete a column or a row from a data frame. So for that we have drop function here, which can drop the column or a row, right? Whichever we want. Suppose we want to delete this row, last row D. So what we'll do is we'll give the name of the row that we want to delete. Now why we have given axis here? So as we have seen that it is like a 2D array, right? 2D array. So in the 2D array, the first index always tell you the row and the second index always tell you the column. So first index start from 0, that means we have given the axis is equal to 0. So axis is equal to 0 tells us here that we want to delete the particular row and not a column, right? So if we run this, you can see that the last D row has been deleted. Now, now run this data frame again. Now, so you see that D is present here, but it has been deleted from here, but it is present in the original data frame, right? So it means it has not been deleted from the original data frame. So if we want it to be deleted from original data frame also, then there is an argument that we have to add, that is in place is equal to true. So in place is equal to true means that the original data frame will also be changed. By default, in place is equal to false. That is, the changes that you are doing in your data frame are not to be seen in the original data frame. But if you want to delete in the original data frame also, so with this command you have to add in place is equal to true. So you run this. Now you can see our original data frame has also been changed. Right now you don't have a D row here. Similarly, you can drop the column also. The only difference is that initially we have provided our axis to be 0. Now we'll provide our axis to be 1. Why? Because the second index always gives us a column. So if you run this, you will see that Z column has been deleted. Now we have not defined in place is equal to true here. It means the values are not changed in the original data frame. To check, you can add a cell here and check. Right? The original data frame still contains the Z column. So in this way, we can add any column or drop any column from a data frame, any column or any row. Now in machine learning and deep learning, there is very important thing to how to handle the missing values. For example, the real world data set that we use consists of many missing values in that. So we cannot use the data directly before removing the missing values. So handling missing values is very important, and it can be easily done with the pandas library, right? So for that, first of all, I am creating a data frame, and then we can add some nan values to it. That is the values. So to handle missing values, first of all, I am creating a data frame here. So for that, I am using the same syntax that I have used in the starting. That is from NumPy. Import, we have imported the random class as R, and we are creating here a list of integers, random integers in the range 1 to 9 of type 5 cross 5. Right? I have created a data here. Now for the data frame, we had to add the rows also, labeling for rows also, and labeling for columns also. So I have manually add the labeling for rows. In the similar way, I have done a head and the labeling for columns also. And we have added all this into a data frame using pd.dataframe function. First, we have given the data, then we have given the indexing, that is the rows, and then we have given the names of the columns. So if we run this, you can see that we have created a data set here that consists of columns B, W, X, Y, and Z, 5 columns and 5 rows. That is 5 cross 5 array that we have created. Now suppose we also add a string type column to it so that we can have a variety of columns in it. So for that, I have added a new column in the similar way I have told you before. Df new is equal to the values that I want to add here. Suppose I am adding some state, name of the states, right? So you will see that our data frame now consists of a new column that consists of states of the type string. So now that we have created this data set, you have seen that there are no null values here. To handle the missing value, first of all, we are creating some missing values here. I am randomly creating some missing values. So how I am creating the missing values? Like I told you, how we can access the element? We can access the element using LOC function. So I am using that LOC function. From that, I am taking the A, that is this row, and B, that is this column, that is 9, and replacing it with np.nan. np.nan means no number, right? So it will replace this n with the missing value. Similarly, I am replacing C row and B column to np.nan, and similarly, I am randomly adding some nan values to it. So if I run this, now you see that our data set consists of random NaN values. Like here, it consists of A, V, then this is C, V, then next was D, Y, and next is D, Z, NaN value here, and D, new NaN value here. So we want to remove the missing values from this data set. So there are various ways of handling missing values. Look, like for example, I can drop the missing values. I can directly drop the row or the column that consists of missing values, right? So how can we do that? There is a function drop NA. So if I run this function drop NA, so what it will do is it will give us only those rows that does not consist of any null value. Like for example, A consists of null value, so it has deleted this whole row. Similarly C and similarly D, and we are left with only 2 rows here. Now suppose I want to delete values based on columns and not rows. So for that, what I can do is, so I am not adding these delete permanently, like we are not giving this delete function to the original data frame, right? So the original data frame is still the same. Now suppose instead of using the rows to delete, we want columns to be deleted, right? So we'll give the axis as 1, as I already told you, right? So if we run this, you can see that now the data has been deleted with respect to columns. Now the V column contains the missing values, so it has been deleted. Similarly, Y and Z column also contain the missing values, so it has also been deleted. So this is a first way of handling missing values, that you can drop the drop with respect to rows or with respect to columns, whatever is more efficient to you. But in practical, this method is not very efficient. Why? Because you can see that we are only left with either 2 columns or we are left with 2 rows only, right? We were originally having 6 columns and 5 rows. Out of 6 columns and 5 rows, either we are left with 2 rows or 2 columns, right? So it means we are deleting a lot of data that might be important. And real life, we also have a shortage of the data, so we cannot afford to delete this huge amount of the data. So this type of deleting the data to remove the missing values is not very efficient way. For example, if you have very large data, then you can do this, then it will not affect the data that much. But if we are already having a smaller data set, then this type is not efficient. So instead of just deleting the values, we try to fill these missing values, right? So instead of deleting these values, we'll try to fill these values one by one. So there are various ways of filling these values, right? We can use multiple methods to fill these values. I'll start with the basic one. We can, suppose we have integer values, we can replace it with mean, right? We can replace it with the median, we can replace it with the mode also, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm doing df. From that, I am taking out the V column, this first V column. So now I am replacing this V column with, I'm not replacing, I'm filling this V column. Where I am filling? Fill NA. NA is a NaN values. We are filling only where this column has NaN values. So this fill NA is a function that will fill the values. So now we have to give the value which we want to fill, right? So if I show you step by step, so it means what we are doing here is we are taking the data frame. Out of the data frame, we are taking the column V, and from that we are filling the null values, NA values. Now what this is a function that we have created. Now inside this, I want to tell which type of value I want to fill it with. So we'll use value is equal to. So for which value I want to fill it with? I want to fill with the mean of this row, right? Mean where data is not NaN, right? So what I will do, I will take this column. I will calculate the mean of this column, right? And now the mean that I have calculated, we got the value and we are replacing it here, right? So this is the function that I have defined here. Now I have also defined in place is equal to true. It means that we are making this change in the original data set also. So this is the function that I have created here. So if I run this, now you see that it has replaced the first nan value with the mean of this and this nan value also with the mean, right? In this way, you can fill your null values with the mean of that particular column. Similarly, we can do for Y also and Z also. So similar is the, I have used similar syntax for Y column. So you can see here, I am taking the Y column out of the data frame and filling the null values with the mean of that column. And I am writing in place is equal to true. It means I am making the changes in the original data frame also. So now you can see the Y is also replaced with the mean here. Mean is 6. So now you can replace all the values with the mean, or you can replace the value with the median also. So this depends upon the type of data set that you are having, right? For example, suppose you are having age, so you can replace it with the mean, but some columns may require to be filled with the median, right? So for that, we are doing, what we can do here is, instead of using this mean function, we'll use this median function. Just straightforward, we are taking the Z column and replacing the with the median of the Z column, right? So if I run this, so it has been, so you can see the median here is 5. So it has been replaced with the 5 here, right? Now see, you see the only nan value that is left is here, right, in the new column. But we cannot use mean here, right, because these are the string values. We cannot find out the mean of this column, right? Similarly, median is not applicable here. So when we have these type of columns, these are the categorical columns that we have. So if we have these type of columns, what we use is we replace it with the mode of that column. So mode will be the most frequently occurring category. That is the most frequently occurring category that is here in this column. The nan value will be replaced it by that. So it is also same. So we have a data frame. Out of that, we find out the new column and we are filling it with mode, right? So if I run this and run this data frame, so you can see it has been replaced it with the Chandigarh, that is the most frequently occurring category. Now you can see here that I have used an extra 0 here, right, which I have not used in case of median as well as in case of mean, right? So I have used it is, when you calculate the mode of any column, like for example, I am what we are doing here is I am taking this new column and calculating the mode out of it. So you will see that I am getting a series here, right? I'm not getting just simple value. For example, let me show you and make it more clear. Suppose I have DF V and I want to calculate the mean of it. So you will see here I'm getting a single value, that is 5.333, and we can directly replace it here, right? But here I am getting a series. So out of the series, I want this 0 index. So that is why I have written here 0, right? So for the mode, we get the answer in the form of series, and from the series, I want this first index. So I am writing here at 0, right? So in this way, we can have, we can remove any type of missing values without deleting the data. Now the next thing is we can check the unique values in the data frame also. For that we have a function unique, right? What we can do is we can take out any column and we can check the unique values that are present in that column. For example, I am taking out this unique column, new column, and calculating the unique values out of it. So you can see that when I am using this unique function, it is giving me the 3 unique values that are present in the data set, that is Punjab, Haryana and Chandigarh. Now there is another method, NUnique. So what this NUnique tells us, it tells us the number of unique values. Sometimes we are not interested in how many, like what type of unique values are there. We are interested in the number of unique values that are present. So in that case, we can directly use the NUnique function and it gives us the 3 unique values that are present. There is another function known as value_counts. It tells us that how many values are present with respect to each category. For example, with the category Chandigarh, I have 3 values that are of Chandigarh, 1 for Haryana and 1 for Punjab. So I can individually also calculate the number of values. Right? For example, if we have a very large data set and from that we want to calculate the which category is having which values, so we can use this value_counts function. Next is we can, there are some other functions also which can be applied to the columns of the data frame. For example, if I want to find the sum of the particular column, so I can directly use a sum function of that particular column. For example, I'm taking this V column and I am calculating the sum out of it. If I run this, it will give me the total sum that is there in the V column, right? There is another function that is null. So if you run this, it will tell you that for each row how many null values are present, right? So I have removed all the null values, so here it is showing false, that it is having no null value. If any particular row will have a null value, it will show true here, that this row is having a null value. Next is the head function. Head function is like, for example, if there is a very large data set consisting of thousands of rows and we just want to see the type of values that are present there, which can be judged using some of the rows, right? We don't want to see the complete data set. We just want to see the starting sum of the rows to make the sense of the out of the data. So we can use head column. Inside that we can write how many rows we want to see. So if I write 2, you can see the first 2 rows out of the complete data frame, right? And by default, if I write nothing here, it will give us the 5 rows, right? By default, head give us the 5 rows. And if we want more or less than that, we can pass it as an argument. Now, next is, for example, we are manipulating this data frame and everything, right? And we want to, we are creating this data frame here only. But for example, in the machine learning and deep learning application, we want to import the CSV file on which we want to do the manipulations, right? So for that, here is a read CSV function, which we can directly use. For example, we have a variable final data here from where we want to read this CSV file, and we can provide the name here, Titanic_dataset.csv. This file is present in the current directory here. You can see it is present here. So if it is not present in the current directory, you can give here the full path also, right? If you will give the full path, then also it can detect the CSV file that will be present in that particular path which you are providing, right? If I suppose run this, so you can see the data set that we have. This is the original real life data set that will be that mostly the work is done on, right? So you can see it is a combination of various Like for example, these are string types, these are numerical types, right? So we have a combination of these in the original data set also, the way that we worked on that. So here we want to, suppose we want to see only, now you know that there are 891 rows. We don't want to see all the rows. We just want to make the sense out of it that what type of columns are present. So we can use that head function that I defined or above. So by default, it will give us the first 5 rows out of it. Now we can see the data clearly here. So we can then work on. For example, here you can see that there are NaN values present, right? So we can remove these NaN values in the similar way that we have defined above, that how to handle the missing values, right? Now, suppose you have handled all the missing values and you have done everything that you want to do in this data set, and then you want to write the CSV file to the current directory, right? After you have made all the changes, you want to write it. Now you can see I am using here name new.csv. There is no file like this present here. So if I run this to CSV function, I'll give the name of the file that I want it to save to. So if the original is the file is already present in that particular directory, it will replace it, right? And if the file is not present in that particular directory, it will create that file and then write the values inside it. Right? So if I run this, so you can see here that I have a new CSV folder here, and it will contain all the changes that you have made in the data set, right? So similarly, you can write, you can read any CSV file or you can write any CSV file. You can also read Excel sheet, text files, HTML files, any files you can read using the Pandas data frame. You can explore that using the link that is present here. It consists of all the functionalities of the Pandas Pandas, all series, data frames and everything, all the functionalities present here. I have given you all the functionality that will be used in machine learning and deep learning. If you want any extra information, you can see from here, right? So you can see this is a link that I have provided. So here you can find out anything about the Pandas data frame that you want. For example, I'm getting started, right? So here it is shown that how you want to install this, right? If you go to user's guide, you will get all the things that you want to do, right? For example, if you want to create object, you want to handle the missing data that I already told you, you want to merge some data frames, you want to group them, right? All you want to create series, data frames, all the information that is present in this documentation, you can refer here if you want any additional information, right? So these are the two most important used libraries. One is NumPy and one is Pandas that are used for data manipulation, right? So any doubt in these data manipulation libraries?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So after data manipulation, there is one library that we will discuss today for the data visualization purposes, right? So we'll cover some basic data visualization. You can follow the other graphs also, but I'll cover some basic one. So Matplotlib is a basic library that is mostly used for data visualization. It is very popular plotting library and it works well with the NumPy and Pandas, right? That is why we have studied NumPy first and Pandas first. Similar to the way that you have installed NumPy and Pandas library, you can also install this Matplotlib library. So for that, you can use pip install Matplotlib. And while importing the library, here we import it like this: import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. So why we are using like this is because most of the functionality of the Matplotlib that we used comes in the pyplot class, right? So we are directly using this pyplot class, and from we are aliasing this to PLT, right? I run this. Now, I have written like this percentage matplotlib inline. So this is specially used in if you are running on the Jupyter notebook. This is used by so that all the figures that are generated here, all the figures, all the graphs that are generated here are shown inside this Jupyter notebook only. It is not opening any, or it is not popping any extra pages, right? So for that we write this matplotlib inline, right? But if you're using, like for example, any other IDE, like for example you are using Spider or any other, then you don't need this particular line. You need this particular line for the Jupyter notebook, so that all the it should not pop up many multiple tabs of the Google Chrome. All the functionality that is here is shown inside this Jupyter file only, right? So we'll start with some basic plotting. For that, suppose we want to plot some basic plot, right? We require X function and we require Y function. So for X, what I am using here is I am using linspace function. What linspace function does is it will give us linearly separable points. Right? Sorry, not linear. Yes, linearly spaced numbers. Linearly spaced numbers we get here. So we'll get the numbers in range from 1 to 5, where 5 is not included. And we want 10 numbers of these types, right? So if we run this, so you can see all the numbers are linearly spaced. And sorry, 5 is here included, right? In linspace. And I'm creating a y which is x square, right? It is just the square of x. Now this is the main how we want to plot in this Jupyter notebook. So first of all, what we use is we use a figure function. What figure function does it? It will create an empty canvas for us, right? Where we can plot anything. For example, if I run this, you see I have a figure of this size with no axis. It means that it has created an empty canvas for us, and we can do anything inside this canvas. We can add axis to it, we can add lines to it, or we can do anything with it, right? So it creates an empty canvas for us. Now we have an empty canvas with us. Now in that empty canvas, I want to add the axis to it, right? So I'm running this. So add axis function does it, it adds the axis to it. So what does this 4 argument give us? This first argument give us the left, that is the here, but that is what part of the canvas does the figure start from, right? Similarly, it gives us the bottom, that is left is also same and bottom is also same. This gives us the width, that is how much percentage of the canvas we want to use, that is 80 we are using, and similarly this is for the height that we want to use. All these values are in the range of 0 to 1. You can change these numbers to see how these values are changing. For example, I have shown I am showing here one example. Suppose I am adding another axis here. So but see here that I have taken same left for both, that is it is overlapping here. Same bottom for both, that is why it is overlapping here. But I am using, instead of 80%, I am using only 50% of the canvas. Now you can see the second axis that will be created is here. You can play with these numbers. For example, I am raising the bottom by some percentage, for example 0.2, right? So what it is doing is, you can see that this new axis is just 0.1% above the previous one, right? Similarly, I want from left also, I want it to be shifted. Suppose I have shifted to 0.2. If I run this, now you can see that it is also shifted from here. right? You can check these numbers, you can explore these numbers, and then you will able to see the length, width and height. For example, I am using this 0.8. So why it has gone out? Because I have started from 0.2, right? So if I had started from 0.1, then it would have overlapped completely, right? So in this way, you can add various axes to it, right? You can try these different numbers and see what can fit you. Now I am adding actual plot here. So for that, first of all, I'm creating an empty canvas. Then I am adding an axis to it. And then I am using the plot function to plot the actual data. For that, I have taken the X values that I have shown you in the starting, the Y values, and R here indicates what color do I want of the plotting, right? I'm using R for red here, right? So if I run this, you can see that I have got a plot, right, where we have this canvas and the line that is x comma y, right? That is y is equal to x square line. Right? So you can see that this graph is quite crude. We can add labels to it. We can change the color of it to anything that we want, right? For example, suppose I want a blue color instead of red, and I can use blue. I can add the labels here, like set underscore x label will give us labeling here. Set underscore y label will give us labeling here. And we can add title to the plot also, right? So if I run this, so you can see that I have got the X label, the Y label, the title, and the color of the line is blue, right? So you can make n number of changes inside this graph. You can increase the font size, you can rotate these numbers, like for example, if there are suppose bigger labels, then we can rotate the number, we can tilt them to the 45 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, right? You can increase the font size, you can bold them, you can italicize them, anything you want to do with them, you can do. This is the most crude version of the plotting. Now, sometimes we had subplot with us, right? That is multiple plots in a single plot. So for that, we use the plt.subplots library. What it will do is, it will automatically create an empty canvas for us, then automatically create the axis for us based on the number of rows and number of columns we have provided here. So number of columns and number of row means like how many graphs we want row wise and how many graphs we want column wise. For here, for example, I want one graph per row and I want two of those in a column, right? If I run this, you can see I have got an empty canvas with the two axes column wise, right? Similarly, I can have subplots that can have two row wise and one column wise, right? So if I run this, you can see that I have now two subplots row wise, right? Now, for example, for the first type, that is row wise, we have one plot and column wise, we have two plots. And I want to plot now these two subplots. How can I do that? Now this axis contains the two plots, right? So first one is at 0th label and second one is at the first label. At the 0th label, I want to plot, so it's dot plot function, which what do I want to plot? X comma y in the color red. In the first axis, I want to plot y on the horizontal line, x on the vertical line, and with the color blue, right? So if I run this, so you can see I have two subplots column wise. One is giving us x here, y here, and second is giving us y here and x here, right? So we can plot n plots here, right? And similar to the initial one, we can add x labels, y labels, we can add the title to it, right? So I am adding here to the first axis, I am first plotting, then I am adding X label, Y label and giving the title to it. And similarly, I am doing it for the second plot also. So now you can see that I have first plot with X here, Y here and the title. Next plot we have Y here, X here and the title this, right? But here you can see one problem, that these two graphs are overlapping with each other, right? X is coming inside of the first graph. To solve this problem, what I can do is, there is another function type layout which solves this problem of overlapping. If I run this, now you can see there is no overlapping between. X has come to its right position, right? So you can use this for n number of points. So these are the these are the ways by which you can plot or subplots the graph. Now these graphs can be of any type, like for example bar graph, pie chart, histogram, scatter plots, pie plots, right? So you can have all these graphs. The basic syntax will remain the same, only the type of the graph will change. So I'll show you one example that we will be covering, that is bar graph. Rest example you can explore on your own, and if you will get any doubt, we can discuss that, right? So I am doing this bar graph on the original data set so that you can see how the working is done on the real-time data set that will be actually using in the machine learning and deep learning applications. So first of all, what I am doing is I am importing a CSV file here. Like I already told you how we can do that using the read CSV function. So you can see the data set. Now this is a churn modeling data set that consists of 10,000 of rows and 14 columns. This churn modeling data set gives us the information about the customers for the last 6 months, and then it tells us whether the customer has exited the bank or not exited the bank. That is, customer is still the customer of the bank or he has left the bank, right? So the columns that we are having is like, for example, row number. That this does not add the significance. In the real time, we'll drop these columns like row number, customer ID, surname, because these does not give us any information about whether the person will leave the bank or not, right? So the next is credit score, geography, gender, that is whether the customer is male or female, what his age is, right? For how many years the customer is there in the bank, right? How much balance, the average balance he or she maintains, right? The number of products, has he is having credit card or not, he's an active member or not, right? The estimate salary, and the last one gives us the whether the person has exited or not. If 1 means exited and 0 means the person is still with the bank, right? So this is a real data set, churn modeling data set. So we are taking the first 5 rows out of it, right? The problem that we are taking here in the bar graph is, suppose we want to calculate the number of customers in each country that is present here. For example, how many customers are from France, how many customers are from Spain, and there is another also you can see here, Germany, right? So how many customers are from the Germany? So we want to count the number of customers in each country. So we have to draw the bar graph for that, right? So for that, what we are going to do is, first of all, we are creating an empty canvas here. Like I already told you, using the figure function, we'll create an empty canvas. Now, before reading this line, let me tell you how we are going to get this X and Y. Right? So, for example, now I want this particular column. From here, we want the number of customers, right? So what I'm going to do is, from the data, I'm taking out this particular column. So I'm giving the column name here, geography. So if I run this, so you will see that we have got all the customers and their corresponding countries, right? Now I want to calculate the number of customer in each country. So for that, I told you the value counts function, right? That was giving us the number of times Chandigarh is coming, right? The number of times Punjab is coming. That was counting, that was like, for example of counting the number of customers, right? So we are using that function here, value counts. So what value counts give us is, there are 5,014 customers in France, from France, 2,509 customers from Germany, and 2,477 customers from Spain. We have got the value count for that, right? We wanted that only. And now we want to separate it based on the country. So to separate it based on the country, we want what? We want this index, right? I told you this was the index that we were giving. These were the values that we were having, right? So we want the index for the x-axis, right? So in the x-axis, we want our graph to be like, first should be France, then it should be Germany, then it should be Spain. That is 3 bars that we want. So we are taking index out of it. So if we run this, you can see I have got 3 indices, right? Similarly, now on the y side, I want the values for that. Like for example, I want for France, I want these 5014 values to come, right? And for Germany, we want 2509 values to come. And for that, for y, what we are doing here is, we are taking that data, the original geography data that we have. Now we are counting the values from it, these values. Now instead of taking the index, what I want is, I want these values, right? If I run this, I have got the values out of it. Now I want the bar graph. So the function is dot bar that we are using. On x-axis, what I wanted was indices. So I calculated the indices under x. You can see here. Here, I have got the indexes here. So I am giving x here. And on height, I want the values. So I have taken values here. So I am giving y here. And we are giving the title as number of customers. So if I run this, so you will see a bar graph where we are seeing the number of customers that are present in each country, right? Similarly, we can draw other types of graphs also. So you can go to this link and you can see various graphs. For example, this is the link that I have provided. On here, see the examples portion. It is very detailed library here. So you can see there are various graphs, right? So any graph that you want to create, you can just check from here, right? The bar that I have told you, the bar graph is there, the stacked bar graph is there, right? And if you will come down, there is a bar graph with gradients, there is hat graph. The normal graph that we use is line graphs. We have different types of lines that we have. Like for example, I want a dotted line, I want a very thick line, a very thin line. You can have all these functions from here, right? We can have scatter plots. These are the scatter plots that we can have. We can have pie plots, and number of plots we have. So for example, if I want a simple plot, so if I click on this, it will give me a complete code for that and an example of how the graph will look. From here, you can change the values according to your need. So this matplotlib has a very good documentation where you can see. So this is the overall topic for today. These are the basic 3 libraries that are used in all machine learning and deep learning applications. If you have any doubt, you can ask.
Good evening,
Ma'am.
ma'am. So I have one query.
Yes.
Ma'am, are we able to create dashboards using Matplotlib or any other library?
Yes, we can create using Matplotlib also. There is a newer version of Matplot also, that is Seaborn library, which you can also explore. It gives us more graphs that are not covered in the Matplotlib also.
Okay. And ma'am, one request, can you provide these Jupyter notebooks? Is
Yes,
it possible?
share. Yes, I will share with you.
Ma'am, thank you.
I'll share this Jupyter notebook.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So to add the rows in the datagram, what you can do is you can append it, right, in the form of a list, right? You can add the append. You can use the append function and append it at the end of the data frame. Any other doubt? Any other thing you want to discuss? In the next lab, we'll do feed forward neural networks, right? So these were the basics for that. If you have any doubt here, you can ask. Kurt here asked a question that we can use this syntax to in place command. Yes, we can use that syntax also. It will also do the same thing, right? 2D array slicing we have already covered. So any doubt, any student? So that's it for today's session. Sakshi ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we are done for the today's session.
Okay, ma'am. Just a second, ma'am.
Okay.
So is there anyone having any doubt in today's session? Oh, so I don't think there are any more doubts, ma'am. We can end the session then.
Okay, yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So everyone participants, kindly wait. I'm uploading the attendance link. Just wait for a second.
Yes, you can import these libraries in the PyCharm also, right? You using the same thing, pip install. If you are using Anaconda version, then instead of pip install, you can use Conda install, right? In Anaconda version, Conda install will also work and pip install will also work. You can also do this in Google Colab also. It will work in the same way. There you already have all the libraries that you require.
And ma'am, what about Microsoft Visual Studio?
Yes, you can do in Visual Studio also, but I am not sure about all the libraries, how it will work there, but you can do there also. But the best is Anaconda, right? It will give you various types of IDEs where you can work, and they are very interactive.
Yes, ma'am, and same goes for the PyCharm.
Yes, same goes for PyCharm also. Best is to use Anaconda. It will give you one Spider also and Jupyter also. For Spider, you don't even need the local host. You can directly run it as an application. It is also very interactive.
Any other doubt? So, ma'am, we can end the session now. Thank you so much. And thank you all the participants.
Thank you.
I have uploaded the attendance link in the chat window. So kindly submit your attendance within the next 10 minutes.